Brand should be an experience at the end of the day, like they just got into that true space where they were like, just make it really simple, make it really elegant, make it really that balance of humility and confidence.
Connected Minds, where industries and imagination intersect. Connected Minds explores how human connection sparks creativity and shifts perspectives. In each episode, we'll dive into inspiring conversations with creators, industry experts, and storytellers to explore and unlock game-changing insights across diverse industries. I'm Edmonds, founder and CEO of NRG Studios. Today, we're going to explore the importance of video content within the context of being an essential component as a marketing tool in the technology sector. I am delighted that joining me today to explore this topic is Stuart Andrews, a great friend and creative director at MOI, a multi-award-winning, multi-specialist B2B marketing agency reshaping the way businesses drive growth, connecting the customer experience all the way from brand to revenue. It's B2B, that's not so B2B. Welcome, Stu. I've got to ask about the B2B, not so B2B. Hear me more about that.
Okay. So hey Rob. Not so B2B. So how do we get to that? You and I have worked in B2B for a long time, so you know what happens in that area of the landscape. I think there's a really interesting way of articulating it, and I think what we've identified, and you've probably seen it from your experiences, is that B2B, because of the nature of what B2B is, it's businesses. Very often, it's businesses selling quite complex, expensive solutions or services to other businesses. And that requires, in terms of marketing and certainly a buying process or the sales process, can very often require kind of groups of decision makers to work together.
Absolutely.
But it feels complex. B2B demonstrates a lot of what I would call neurotypical behaviors, marketing behaviors. So it's kind of got itself into a bit of a groove, and I think it gets in its own way sometimes, and that's a really big problem. So when you think about a lot of organizations in B2B, they aren't marketing led, they're sales led.
Yep.
Okay, and by being sales led, sales is very much orientated around a business outcome, and marketing can very often feel like it's a service provider to the sales organization. Is that what you see in B2B marketing is a lot of the same things happening. So when it comes to technology, which is, obviously, that's the area that we work in very heavily. Frankly, a lot of big enterprise tech businesses, tech brands, demonstrate very similar behaviors with the way that they market, they go to market. So they're, you reduce it all down. It's always about features, product features and benefits, or even more simply, speeds and feeds. It was speeds and feeds for years. Everyone wants to talk about that. It's like, that's great. But if you take a step back and have look at yourself in the mirror and think, I don't know, if I'm a cybersecurity solution provider, for instance, how different is my cybersec platform to my competitors? And if I think I'm going to compete or differentiate based on constantly banging on about my product features and benefits, my competitors have probably got something quite similar. And if they haven't,
they're all similar,
right? They're going to come up very quickly, and the playing field's level the whole time.
Yeah.
So we kind of got to this point where we said, well, how endemic is this across sales organizations, across marketing in B2B brands, B2B business? And we realized it's actually really prevalent in kind of all the way. And if you think about, even in terms of the things like demand generation, or the concept of the sales funnel, they've been very established for a long time, and you get behaviors that kind of play into that and they perpetuate it. And then you think about something like LinkedIn Institute came out with this 95-5 thing, which is the Aaron Abbas Institute, actually. It came out with this concept of 95-5 in the last few years. But effectively what it's saying is, of the entire addressable market that you're potentially going after, only 5% of that market will be in market at any time to actually buy your product.
Yeah.
Flip side is 95% of that addressable market not in market for what you're doing right now. So if you're fixated on continuing to do the same thing, which is churning out tons of content, which is about product features and benefits and the same old white papers and the same old reports about the same old things everyone else is doing, because they think that it's going to just get people further down the funnel or further along the buying journey, you're kind of missing the point with all of these other people that aren't in market. Therefore, they probably don't want the same content and the same information served to them. And actually, you need to do something different. And that's where brand is becoming so much more important. So, not so B2B is fundamentally, it's a bit of a provocation to the market. But what we said is, if it was a bit less B2B, and if you could decide how much less B2B you were prepared to be at the appropriate time, do you think you could increase your engagement? If instead you just pulled the handbrake on and said, "Are we being a bit too B2B with this? Do we do this all the time? At this point, could we just dial it down a bit and go, we'll be a bit less B2B and actually test something and see if that makes a difference?" And that's what being not so B2B is.
And that's art for large organizations. When you've got all these different layers of people making all the decisions,
Yeah.
that's quite a tough thing to do, because ultimately what we're talking about here is that individual is going to be trying not to be, is going to be trying to be less not so B2B, be a bit brave, right? Because like all these things that we see in what we do, is what you're talking about here is someone individual who's brave enough to go, I'm going to do this, whatever the outcome is, and hopefully it'll impress my boss.
Yeah.
That's what else we're talking about here, aren't we?
Exactly.
And I think also, I read a report recently that talking about marketing, not so B2B, but in the B2B world, that there seems to be a disparity between what a CEO thinks a marketing person does and what marketing actually is.
Yeah.
There's also that disparity going on as well. And I think also, we talk about Cyberland. So there's also this world where, the classic one, isn't it, Stu, where someone says, what's your USP? I generally think in the world that we live in today, no one has a USP anymore.
Right.
The idea of there's the original idea out there. There's not an original idea out there. They are ideas packaged up in a different way.
Absolutely.
That's the world that we live in today. So, I think it's brilliant, by the way, but it must be, for your business, it must be very tough to convince someone to not be so B2B.
It is tough, but if nobody does it, then we're just going to carry on down the same path, and it's reductive, isn't it? That's the point. It's provocative, and you're right. I mean, at some point, I'm guessing it becomes a bit of a self-filtering exercise, which is, you're right. What you've identified is the human issue with this is you might engage somebody who's well up for it, but actually their chain of command at some point will go, yeah, we don't do that.
Well, hang on a second. Whoa, 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 whoa.
We just want to do what we did last year because that's you spent the budget and we saw a single digit increase, but that's fine because that we hit targets. Why would we stop doing that and do something which feels radically different?
Yeah.
But if we all carry on doing the same thing, particularly with the prevalence of AI and generative AI in the
Comes vanilla. Everything's vanilla, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it comes later, actually. Let's not dive into the
sure.
pigs, as we call it at the moment. Stu, I'm gonna come back just to kind of set the context of our chat today, just so anyone who's listening just understands that. So the context today is all about the importance of video content within the context of being an essential component as a marketing tool in the technology sector, which of course you're an absolute expert in. So that's kind of that is kind of the context of what we're talking about, and then we'll explore different avenues down here. I think it's also important to sort of frame this within a campaign, within that kind of digital ecosystem that you create for clients, okay? Because it can't just be a standalone thing on its own. Those days are long gone. So before we kind of get on to that, I thought we'll put a few layers in here. So talk to me about brands that influence you in your role and why those brands influence you.
Okay. Yeah. So it's very easy as a B2B marketer or as someone who works in a B2B marketing agency or in the industry, in whatever discipline you're in, to stay in your lane. So actually, I could answer this question by saying, well, I can think of a few right now. So the one I'm going to hold up, which is the rational one, is ServiceNow. So I look at ServiceNow as an enterprise tech brand and have huge amounts of admiration and love for them as a brand because of how brave they've been in terms of developing the brand. Over the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen that brand evolve hugely. I mean, the stuff they're doing with video, the stuff they're doing with TVCs, for instance, you know, the latest campaign with Idris Elba in it. There's no other tech brands really that's doing anything like that. The only person I could think that has a brand that's that emotive in a similar space is something like Adobe. And Adobe have fundamentally got the permission to do that because the heartland they occupy is in the studio. Think about that in ServiceNow's world. Why would that become an amazingly emotive brand? And yet what they've done and what they continue to do and what they've committed to do and what they, you know, what they invest in doing, this is why I admire them, is because they keep bloody doing it. It's got resonance and it's got salience to it, and they keep doing it. They've just done it with Put AI to Work, which is the Idris Elba campaign. So that would be one for me. That would be the obvious one. But
I'd be interested to find out. You said early on when I asked you the question that ServiceNow started out as very much a B2B brand
mhm,
and have kind of evolved into the not so B2B brand. And the fact that they are, from what you're saying, it sounds like they're using a lot more kind of emotion in their marketing, in the way that they are putting their marketing across, the way they're differentiating themselves within that space.
mhm,
Like you said, at the core of it is, you know, a relatively functional uh, platform, right?
yeah,
So, can you talk to me a little bit more about how, you know, you changed their thinking, or they changed their thinking, or how you kind of move their thinking away from, I'm going to be B2B, but if you think more in these sort of terms, actually the brand will do A, B, and C, which it clearly is a success story, right?
absolutely. I think they went on the same journey that everyone else has done. I think they went on the same journey as an SAP or an Oracle or you know, any big enterprise Salesforce. They was doing stuff, but it was kind of that more quirky, a little bit tongue in cheek West Coast fun stuff. So they had sort of like they were caricaturing a lot of individuals, a lot of personas. You know, certainly in early stage businesses, that's kind of cool. We used to see it a lot in the noughties, and they did some stuff like that, and it had real personality.
I think, do you think also you can really do that when you're a bit of a startup and you sort of wiggle your way into where the big boys are, but when you start to become one of the big boys, then you do need to you need to find a slightly different voice, don't you think?
I think it's a perfect observation, Rob, and it's exactly that. It's that challenger brand mentality. When you are early stage, you're a startup or early stage, and you're entering a category, and you're attempting to reframe a category, or attempting to kind of like you're disrupting the category in a way. Then being a challenger is a really good thing to do. But you're right. The minute you dominate the category, you own the category. By default, you can't challenge anymore.
If you were to kind of sum that up, Stu, with the ServiceNow brand, you know, kind of where you started working with them and that kind of influence clearly that they've had on you within their brands, within your job, what kind of three key things would you say that has helped shift their thinking that you've perhaps observed?
Clear to me that they joined the dots between what their brand is and the power it has to influence demand. And then they kind of tipped beyond that, and I think they realized that there was a huge opportunity for the brands to really establish a proper territory. And when I say territory, I mean, you know, when we talk about brand territories, we mean that that's a unique place in a customer's mind or a prospect customer's mind that you can occupy, where when they think, and this sounds really dry, when they think workflow engine, they think ServiceNow. And that's what they did. And there was a definite moment where you could see it just elevated by like 10,000 feet. And the beautiful moment with that was when they came out with this, and what they call their enduring statement to market, or it's kind of like their an anthemic statement, which is the world works with ServiceNow.
And do you think it's that statement they put out that has helped them? It's almost like their leverage point, their base point, and everything else that all the marketing they do, the way they think, the way they talk to their customers, the way that salespeople sell, comes off of that.
Yeah, spot on. That's exactly it. And that's why it works, because and it's a really good observation. It works because they put the time and the investment into building that platform in a way that is extensible and does work. So they've matured from being the challenger fun, and they just got into that true space where they were like, just make it really simple, make it really elegant, make it really that balance of humility and confidence. If it's got that to it, this is actually it's got me to a really good point here, which is a brand should be an experience at the end of the day. And like is part of that experience. You ultimately you're buying a product or you're buying a service or a solution. There is an experience that surrounds all of that, and that brand is kind of part of that.
So the distillation of the brand really is about the people behind the people that are advocates of the brand. Brand advocacy has become this huge thing because people believe so much in the brand, in what they are buying and how it can solve pain points and challenges. Yeah. And so it's now we know different to this, how they solve those challenges, those everyday challenges. That's the important stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's a really good point. And to come back to Apple in a minute because there's a reason why advocacy works for brands like that. But again, that was another one of the sort of tipping point moments that I definitely saw with ServiceNow was the realization that they could shift the focus on it's not what they were trying to market or sell, and it was actually shifting the focus on what is it that our customers want from us? What challenges do they have that are either unique to a specific business area or a specific job to be done that our solution could therefore solve for them? Or what's common across, what are the big common themes that we're hearing? Because again, that just flips it and puts it, that's how you that's how you create emotional connection. That's why video is such a powerful thing, isn't it? Because a lot of human beings are very visual thinkers. So if you're able to provide a way for someone to to get a better context, to self-identify, then they're more likely to walk towards you. I'm not going to use the term lean in, but I love the concept of that. It's not appropriate here, but they're going to walk towards you. You need to get into the heads of the market. I mean, you kind of, and that's the thing. You need to understand. You need to listen. Back to that point of listening and talking. You need to listen and understand, and that's where advocacy comes from as well.
And also that there is that adage, isn't there? That people don't know what they want until they know what they want. And let's talk about buyer journey here, because you mentioned the buyer journey earlier, which obviously is a very powerful thing and something we specialize in here.
We have to consider.
So within that kind of buyer journey, and perhaps you wouldn't call that within ServiceNow because we seem to be using that as a particular example, although there are buyer journeys in all companies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So within that ecosystem of the buyer journey, where do you feel, and set some context of why you think video has become that kind of really essential marketing tool?
I want to present a lot of complex information, what I believe to be high value information that might inform someone making a decision or putting me into their consideration set. We know video works really well. You and I both know this. I mean, it's where you operate, and it's an enormous part of the recommendations we make. But actually, I think the reality is we just know how easy it is for us to engage with video. We know there are stats that confirm this. 78% of people watch videos on social media weekly. 55% of people of those who engage with them daily.
Because if we think about a buyer journey, you are very much talking about a whole ecosystem of different campaign assets.
The journey is really important. It's really important I think that's the framework you should always work to, because whether you call it an engagement plan or you call it a buyer journey, or huge respect for you to say an employee journey even, or talent journey, because the journey you're taking, that customer is not always necessarily a customer, are they? I mean,
No.
let's use customer as a label for meaning the audience that you're trying to connect with. We're trying to connect with them for a reason. You actually have to take a step back and work out why you're trying to connect with them. What is it you're trying to do? I mean, when you think about it from a sales and marketing perspective, obviously, ultimately, what you're trying to do is going through those classic stages of driving awareness, getting them through that point of engagement, through consideration to making a purchasing decision, and however you want to break that journey down. There's a pretty standard framework for that.
Yes.
And there's a pretty standard framework for an employee journey where you're talking about, actually awareness, attraction, onboarding, in their kind of experience while they're with you, and then off what's called offboarding, yes, as long as the leader is, and then kind of like keeping in touch with them, so you leave the door open, they go, all of those things. But the fundamental thing about that, to plot or map or work out a- a- any to work out a plan, a strategy and plan for a campaign, which does need to be integrated. I still think the term integrated is really important, is to actually, you have to understand, you really have to get inside. You have to kind of get alongside that audience, those personas, those individuals, or those, in big when you're talking about big enterprise technology, buying groups or buying committees, because there's not one person, there's multiple people, and that shape shifts all the way through the journey, because you might find at the start what you've got is more influencers who are actually testing out different applications, and then they're going to their line manager and saying, "Oh, we really need a low code, no code solution so we can spin up some stuff that solves problems for us quicker. I've used my own credit card and I've been trying out this piece of software," and they kind of aggregate this information. It's not, buyer journeys are never linear. They're kind of like, they're all over the place. People go to different places, and we know this. We've all talked about this in B2B for a long time now, so it's not new news. The important thing is you've got to get right inside the heads of those individuals. And when you get inside their heads, or you get alongside them, and you actually genuinely take the time to try and understand, then you can start to work out where the different formats and channels and touch points and experiences, where do you dial them up and down? I'm a huge believer in video, the power of video. And you're not paying me to say that, by the way. I just so, but I am, and it's not. It does. I mean, I think historically it probably had its. It probably has a very defined. If you looked at an old campaign plan or a schematic, you'd have seen like a couple of things where you'd have been like, we're going to do a TV campaign here, and it's almost above funnel. It's awareness, and you're going to be really difficult to get any attribution out of it unless you turn it into like a piece of trade marketing sales support, and it's got some kind of response code built into it. But actually, how does that work for a brand, or how does that work for talent attraction or employee engagement? And actually, the more you kind of spend time really understanding the journey and how complex that is, and how the touch points shift and change, and the formats have different roles to play, and the power of formats has changed as well. You start to see, because there's so many places we could do this. And even the complexity about sort of geographically dispersed teams, or geographically, you've got customers now who you're probably never able to get in front of physically to sell to. So actually, can't be a combination of big brand video, explainer video, thought leadership video, and then some kind of a sales enablement asset that's got a bit of video content. There's loads more stuff you can do. But that does require you to just really invest time in understanding that journey, and what role could things play, and testing stuff as well. That's really important. Again, not just going, well, we always used video here, so we'll always use it here. It's like, well, why don't you think about how that prospect customer or employee, where are they engaging with and consuming video?
What are we thinking about, and what's their personas? What are their aspirations in their job role? What are their aspirations for their business? And it kind of goes beyond the kind of, I guess, the level of people we would talk to in the, what is it the CEO is looking to do with the business throughout this journey? What is it they want? Because they want could be slightly different to what the marketing team want. So it's trying to find those different owners and understanding what that messaging needs to go all the way through at those different touch points. And I think you made such a great point around testing. So none of this stuff, some of it does work first time. It does. We've seen that. Sometimes it doesn't. It's like, well, okay, so why isn't that landing the best it could? Let's just tweak it a little bit. Yeah. And because we are talking about different kinds of videos, I would love to find out from you where you're seeing tech companies leverage the video content across kind of digital platforms, and then what kind of videos you're seeing maximize the reach and engagement through the video content you're putting out for businesses and you're creating for businesses.
Okay. So let's start at the very top. start of the really big budget stuff, and I've referenced it a few times. There are now, we're now seeing tech brands, tech businesses who are putting out stuff that's feels like it's pretty close to being like that old school, high budget, high production value TVCs. Um, so it's now Idris Elba put AI to work as
Yes.
being the obvious one that I'll talk about. But then think about if you think about that kind of like opportunities to engage, we do still talk a lot to clients about brand anthem videos, and I think they've evolved hugely. I think there are beautiful examples. I know you guys have done some amazing ones in the past that we've loved. I do think there's a place for that, and I think if you've got an incredibly powerful brand like a ServiceNow or like a Salesforce, I think you should have an asset like that. I think it's a really big deal. What you don't want is something that feels hollow, trite, cliched, uses tons and tons of B-roll and talks, uses loads of statements about sustainability. And we've all seen them. There are brilliant stores ones online that we've all seen now. It needs to be consistent, and the quality, you kind of need to establish a baseline for what you're saying. What's the baseline of quality? What level of excellence are you going after? Because if any of those things, and particularly video, if it jeopardizes that or it erodes it, then it's for me it kind of isn't working, and that's where I think we talked slightly earlier on about people kind of saying, well, can we just do one of these, and is that good enough? It's like, well, no, it's not good enough. If you can convince me or we can convince a client that there is a way to do something which is expedient but maintains the quality, absolutely. But I don't want to compromise the quality just to knock something out quick and cheap.
Absolutely.
Why do we want to do that?
All of these assets, video or otherwise, is a channel for telling your story or putting your message across.
This is a good point.
That
Yeah.
it always has to come back to that. What is the message you're trying to tell? What is the best channel to make sure that message gets out there to get the effect that you want? And it has to come back to that every time. It can't, because we get clients come to us and say, "We want a video." Okay, well, why do you want one?
Yeah.
Isn't that the best route?
Yeah. What's the
If
purpose?
it isn't the best route, then let's try something else because it has to be about the message.
Yeah.
The message is the message. The story is the story.
Yeah.
How you tell it, whether you get Idris Elba involved or otherwise, behind that,
You still have to have the.
it's hours of planning. It's not just like let's go and shoot a video. It's the planning behind it and the message. That's the most important thing.
But the interesting thing that's changed, and I think technology has changed this, it's been integral to changing it, is the way we tell stories. So whether you want to call it a story or whether you want to call it a narrative arc or whether you want to call it a proposition, all of those things are effectively, you need to bring something to life and explain it to someone or tell it to someone, whether you're explaining your experience or you're telling them a story. Can be a bit cynical about the term storytelling sometimes because I'm not sure it
Really, is it because
right?
now it's been used so many times? Well, you have to tell a story. You have to tell a story.
No. Do you?
You, you don't actually have to tell a story every time. If the brand that you're trying to bring to life for clients, consumers, whatever, that you don't necessarily need to tell a story, but you do need to tell a message, have some kind of message that's going to resonate with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Because I think the word stories is overused.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think it confuses people. However, I'm going to use it to make a specific point here because it works really well for storytelling. And whatever your interpretation of storytelling is, and I think you and I are on the same page, that it doesn't mean specifically what it is in its original sense. The way we tell stories using media has changed. And now there's this thing called mosaic storytelling. And mosaic storytelling is you need to be able to break that story, whatever it is, up into very small parts, and you need to be able to surface it in lots of different ways so that it's easy for the person who's receiving it to stitch it all together. And that story might be 27 13-second short reels you put out across Instagram, Pinterest, something on LinkedIn, It's a mosaic. You're not you're not limited to, and you don't have to rely on one format to tell an end-to-end story. You can tell a story using lots of different things, and that's mosaic storytelling. And it's I heard someone talk about it within the last year, and it really stuck with me because it's like I watch consumption habits. This is the thing about me being fascinated by people. If you watch people's consumption habits, they've completely changed. One of my kids, you know my kids, Rob. So one of my kids has turned around and said, "Can you take the TV out of my room? I don't watch it anymore."
Wow.
What? Okay. This one's studying film. So what do you watch it on this? That's a generation who are now kind of hardwired to consume video content like that. I mean, they're just like they're just set up and hardwired to process mosaic storytelling. Their willingness to consume video content is all about incredibly short bursts.
Yes.
Well, it's almost like they don't have the tolerance or patience to sit and watch something that's half an hour. It's too long. Like,
I do think that's different though in the B2B world.
yeah.
I think that is a different thing. Yes, of course we do the 20-second and 60-seconders, but what we're seeing is there's definitely a trend for putting longer form content out there, and as long as it is specific to an audience,
Yeah. And it's
uh,
good, right?
and it's engaging enough to that audience, people will watch it. So if I think, the technology space and service now, if they were putting out really interesting long form content, and when I say long form content, I'm talking sort of, anywhere to that sort of 5 and 10 minutes even mark, as long as it's informative, it's interesting, it's talking about pain points and solutions and challenges to the audience that they're looking to reach, people will sit and watch it. I mean, we've done some that kind of long form content recently, and they're getting good viewing figures. I mean, they're not amazing viewing figures, but they're getting good viewing figures and they're getting interest, right? So I'm always I'm always slightly kind of cautious around this kind of, well, everything has to be 20 seconds, 30 seconds, seconds. It does for certain audience, 100%. If you're reaching that kind of, teens, early 20s,
Mm.
well, definitely. But if you are if you're trying to reach that sort of more professional sector, then
Longer form, yeah.
the longer form stuff, it does work.
What I love that underpins that is really engage. I really try and embrace this awareness that there are the way you can tell a story, the way you can articulate or express what it is you're trying to get across can be done in a mosaic form, and that means you don't need one or the other. You don't need a long form video or a 20-second video. You can have all of these things, and I absolutely agree with you. I would love to see more long form coming in. What frustrates and disappoints me is when you see B2B brands have that want to use video or want to film stuff, and they do it with like thought leaderships or roundtables, and it's always the same thing over and over again. And it's almost like it becomes white noise. You zone out on what they're saying and you just look at the overall kind of production of it and you think, oh, it's going to be the same thing I've seen
Mm.
time and time again. And I'd love to see that happen differently. I would love to see somebody take that and just like flip the script on it slightly, do something slightly different. Look,
A brilliant example of that. So it's a Netflix documentary about Bill Gates. It's called Inside Bill's Mind.
yeah,
And there are, I mean, obviously it's not a round table, right? It's this documentary about Bill Gates, but there are scenes in it where the director is simply going for a walk with Bill Gates, and
yeah,
right, and that essentially a round table. It's essentially a fireside chat. Is what they're actually doing in that instance, right?
exactly.
You kind of go, well, can you imagine if there was more of that kind of stuff where it then doesn't feel like it's in a room and it's lit and it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
we're gonna film it with a crew, and there'll be a structure to this, but we're gonna do it while you're walking
Right.
through a field or whatever it might be. So then it will feel like you're sort of listening in to a private conversation and kind of giving that sort of essence of of finding out this information.
And that's lovely. That's basically,
That kind of stuff, isn't it?
and that's what I want to see. That's what and that's what I love it when we go through. And so it comes back to your point about strategic planning, and the idea, that platform idea, is at that point, that's where you need to be saying, okay, at this point, this point in the campaign plan, or in the customer journey or engagement schematic, at this point, our recommendation is we really think that what would be cool to do is a series of videos, and they're based around this idea, exactly what you were saying, based around this, which is like, you just provide a totally different context for people to absorb information. And if it is a short video, then or a series of short videos, then that's what it can be.
So what these kind of emerging technologies are coming through, how do you think they're going to start to shape the future of marketing, and obviously video within the context of that?
Yeah. I'm assuming part of that is, I'm assuming AI is included in that
Of
question.
course, yeah, absolutely.
So
AI, AR, VR, all of those
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So look, definitely, I think definitely, it's definitely changing things right now. I think I have slight concerns around the perception or expectation that something like AI and Gen AI is setting right now, because I do think it's giving some sort of a bit of a false idea about what's possible. And like you referenced the Coca-Cola advert, for instance, and we know that it had a lot of wow factor, but actually when you looked at it from a quality, consistency, production perspective, it probably it probably made your skin crawl.
And also, Stuart, to taking that as an example, I think there's also a misconception that it's one person that's just putting things into a computer.
Buttons.
I think on that Coca-Cola AI advert, I think there was about 50 people working on it.
Yeah, it probably was, and that's the thing, right? And that's what's frustrating me is this. There is this perception, because it's so prevalent, because it's so readily available, because it's kind of this terrible conceit of saying you can do stuff quicker and cheaper, and actually everyone can be creative. And it's like, yeah, I think everyone can be creative. Everyone is creative. That doesn't mean to say everyone should be creative, and it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that everyone should suddenly go, well, we can just do it ourselves, because actually what you'll do is you'll just pump the ether full of really low value, low quality content, which just is a bit of a race to zero, really, because
Yeah.
people won't take any notice of it. I mean, one of the things, actually, is a slight aside, but one of the things, the big trends we're noticing right now, seems to be stemming from something Dieter Rams, the product designer, said like over 50 years ago, which is the idea of do less but better. And we're starting to see that in some brands now, where they're saying, we don't want to do the same volume of content we used to do. What we actually want to do is less, but we want to raise the bar, or we want to raise the quality of it. That's where video comes in straight away, because, well, you're not just going to pump out a load of static assets. We now can think of really nice applications for video in different lengths, different formats to use on different channels, that all help to tell one story or bring one idea to light.
Utterly insightful, and
Thank
a huge amount for audiences to digest over.
Always love spending time talking to you, Rob. We always kind of it's good. I get a good brain workout on these things.
It's great to hear. Wonderful to hear. If you enjoyed this show, like, subscribe and follow us. All reviews are welcome. We have lots more fantastic guests in future episodes of Connected Minds. Now at NRG Studios, we specialise in supporting businesses by crafting buyer journeys that captivate, engage and convert prospects to loyal customers. Our team of creative experts blends dynamic moving images with strategic digital ecosystems that connect buyers emotionally to your brand. So let's partner and build a visual experience that drives real results, and reach out today and let's bring your brand story to life. Thanks for listening. Until next time.